Welcome to Screen Junkies News. I am Roth Cornet, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Corey Jandreau and Jay Washington.
Thank you for having us.
Stoked to be here. These are the Marvel experts, and we are going to talk about the season 1 of Netflix's The Punisher. Now, we're all caught up. We watched all 13 episodes, so there will be full spoilers ahead. You have been warned. Here's your spoiler warning.
Pause now, go away, watch some stuff, come back.
Come back and let's talk about
After you've watched all 13, of course.
Because we're going to dive 13.
All 13, there's going to be full spoilers, but we'll go sort of bit by bit.
Okay.
Topic by topic of this. First thing, just general first impressions.
I was really impressed by the tone choice they went with, how grounded it was, how real it was, and how tricky the subject matter was, but how it didn't like skirt issues. It didn't avoid things that would be really difficult to talk about. It felt very mature in a show that like Punisher can be a really immature character. Punisher can be handled like a grunt with a gun, and they call him that. And instead of that, it was one of the most thoughtful, thought-provoking, inspiring, and emotional shows on Netflix. And it made me cry, and I knew I'd be traumatized by violence. I didn't know I'd be traumatized by emotion. And I was so invested in all these characters. And it's in my top shows. I loved Punisher.
I like the fact that because it's a Marvel Netflix show, we've been so used to somebody having powers or ninja or something like that, and that's not at all happening throughout 13 episodes. Mm-hmm. This is grounded. You have a hacker in Micro. You have a Marine in Frank Castle. Mm-hmm. You have the Department of Homeland Security. You have a former Marine in Billy Russo. You have everybody that's grounded. Nobody's trying to be a superpower, super entity. They kept it so level where it's like, oh, I want to watch this. This is a gritty drama. And you got really invested in it.
I felt like I recommended this to a couple of friends of mine who don't necessarily normally like Netflix Marvel series. They're not comic book people. They're not superhero people. But to me, this is one that felt like you almost can't compare it to the other ones. You can't say where it lands in them. If you were to make a list, it would be very difficult because it's so outside of
yes,
it.
It is.
Right?
So like with Daredevil, I was watching, I was like, oh, Daredevil's in the black costume. This feels real-ish, but you still wouldn't be like, oh, guy jumping across a building. That's reality. Yeah. But at points in this movie, I'm from Boston, so the marathon bombing is a very traumatizing experience in my life where when I saw that footage, it was home. It was my home being destroyed. And the end of episode 9 with the bombings looked so real and so lifelike and so impactful that the rest of the show, it felt like this is a thing that happened in my life because there weren't ninjas. There wasn't the hand. Nobody came back from the dead. These were all real people in real situations. And that made it so much more traumatizing in a positive and negative way. Like this was the most heartfelt of the shows for me personally.
And we've seen Jon Bernthal, right?
Yes.
Already played the Punisher. We already loved him as this character. However, this is the first deep dive we've gotten. What'd you think?
Yeah, we got bits and pieces in Daredevil. So you kind of had a little inkling of what their character would be, but this one went so in depth and you get to see more of Frank's mindset. When you start out and you see him with full hair and a beard, like he's just living his life. It's a continuation without even acknowledging what's it continuing from. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We last see him shooting ninjas on a roof. That's the last thing we see him shooting ninjas on the roof and giving a wink to Daredevil and go bye-bye. But we don't go there. We go him trying to live a normal life, just trying to get his things together, breaking a wall down with a sledgehammer, just going at it.
What I loved was it was a year 2 story. It wasn't an origin story.
Yes,
it was a year 2 story. Like I could pick this book up and be like, oh, it's an annual. Like, and I could be like, where's Frank been? And it leaned into flashbacks in the right amount of ways. And it didn't like jar you you didn't need to watch Daredevil, but it helped if you did. It only made it more beneficial. And I really liked that the shape of Jon Bernthal really reflects our times. Like when we had Dolph Lundgren, that was a product of the 80s. When we had like Tom Jane, that was the product of the early 2000s, 2000s. And then like the Ray Stevenson full blown like I'm Frankenstein, like that was a metal like crazy 2010s.
Yes, it
like
was.
We're in the teens now and we're living in this world and this reality, and Jon Bernthal is the Punisher we've always needed because it's a product of where we are as a society of superhero products.
Yeah, you didn't have to have a big stocky guy. No. You didn't have to have a 6'3", 6'4" guy. You didn't have to have him super jacked up. This is a Marine who looks like he's been through the training and everything. And we were talking about this before we started recording. Jon Bernthal looks like he will fight you.
He got the same nose broke. Like it looks like John Romita Sr. drew that man's face. Like John Romita Jr. and his dad just were like, that's Jon Bernthal, born. It was amazing.
He looks like a guy that is trying to maintain control. I think that's what really worked. It's not so much like the choice wasn't I'm out of control. It's that he's like the Hulk. He's always angry. He's always almost out of control. He's almost going to kill you.
Yeah.
And he's trying to stop that. And it's that tension I think really works.
Remember that in the beginning? I'm sorry to cut you off. Remember in the very beginning when he was working on the construction site and the dudes kept picking on him?
Yeah.
And he picked up that sledgehammer and he had that look in his face like, I can really do this right now. And he was like, no, let me control myself.
And the loneliness and the bleakness of the show wouldn't have worked without Jon Bernthal, because that's the Punisher we got now. And I really feel like that's the strength of this show, is you just feel this palpable remorse for everyone's decisions. Good guys, bad guys, family. There's not a character you don't go like, I feel so bad. Like, there's just so much sorrow and remorse, and that's a Punisher we haven't gotten to go 13 hours with, and that's the beauty of the Netflix format.
And you guys were talking about Micro before, who is a relatively minor character in this series. I had a friend ask me, do they have Micro in there? And I'm like, not only do they have him, but this is one of the best characters. The entire series, it becomes this weird, fun, odd couple experience.
It's almost a buddy cop movie at points.
But then they develop the bond of brotherhood that they're talking about, that these other men came out of, right? By the end of the series, you really believe that this person would potentially sacrifice his life for this guy's family, not only because of his loss, but because he cares about him.
And that was a beautiful thing with the character arc of Micro, is that we were saying, like, I never expected to invest in him, much less his family. But it was so much so that, like, when he, spoiler alert, got killed another time, like, I remember just being like, don't, and being so upset that it happened. And then when he popped back up, I was like, yeah, how did I care? How did I care that much?
Were you also a little bit like, this was my experience? No!
Yes, I was. I was like, oh my God.
They just saved him. And then at the end, when he comes back, I'm like,
body bag.
That family's going to need so much therapy.
And we were
that kid.
We were there. Yes. We were the people going like, I've seen him die twice. His family's seen him die twice. Oh my God, Micro.
I also felt for the kids. The daughter, when she first saw him, when he called her, he was like, Leo, listen to my voice. And she looked, and she had that hesitation of like, wait, is this? And she couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
And that was one of the tearful moments. Like, this was a reconnection, because he had been wanting to go back to his family for the longest. Remember, there was a time where Frank was playing with his son in the street.
That football scene was so good.
And Frank was like, go, they will kill him.
Yeah.
And he had to fight that. And like I said, you never thought you would get that invested in Micro. You watched how they hate, like you said, an odd couple. They were at ends with each other. Then you see like Frank, like, I don't trust you at first. In the beginning, Frank's
and
like, I don't trust you.
They shouldn't have. They shouldn't have trusted each other.
He's like, I don't know. You just one of those trying to kill me. He was like, look, I'm not that guy. He was so calm with it.
But I think we have to really credit Steve Lightfoot, who is the showrunner, because every single character is given their due. Those kids, and often kids in shows like this just end up being kind of tools, right? They're plot devices, and they're very broad. But each of these kids had such specific personalities, and even this moment of him smacking his sister.
Oh yeah, that was like, whoa.
You think you're just gonna hate this kid for the rest of the series, but you find empathy, right?
You so understand what he's going through on a level that you don't expect, and every time he speaks, you're like, oh, I'm in pain with him, not at him. And you understand what the mom's going through. You understand what all the characters in this have arcs with an amazing amount of screen time. Like the way they juggled, like I can't imagine what their like Bible looked like. Their show Bible must have been like 80 pages of each character in arc and shape, and it wasn't chronologically confusing. It wasn't emotionally confusing. You just felt hurt so much, and it didn't discount the action, which was beautiful. Like a show where we're talking about this much empathy and emotion and action, there's a scene where Punisher runs down a hallway, grabs a guy doing a barrel roll, uses him as a shield, and keeps running, and you're like, that felt totally appropriate. Like after crying your eyes out, that happens. You're like, works. Same universe. Like that's incredible to have emotional empathy as the brutality and stakes of violence are that high at the same time.
Do you think that it's credited also to the fact that they had a very specific goal that they stayed focused on the entire time?
They knew what they were. This is where we're going. This is it. We can't deviate.
And the
from
villain
this.
had that.
But I'm saying, like, each character had a very clear, simple, relatively simple motivation.
Lewis Wilson.
Oh.
The Marine, Lewis Wilson, the soldier who he dug a foxhole in his backyard.
Curtis, he lost his leg and he's just trying to make it right by making himself feel better, making others feel better. Everyone's just like trying to get by.
I'm just trying to get by. And you were like,
that's the arc. Every single character.
But they kept everybody. This is what they are. We're not gonna have them be anything more, and we're not gonna have them just be a plot device at the same time. They're gonna all be substantial to the plots of what we're doing for the whole story.
Right.
Lewis Wilson's the guy goes crazy, and it brings Frank in on a whole nother level, which in terms makes him find out about Billy Russo.
Right, which was, I love that villain, like Billy Russo, that use of like that character, Jigsaw, spoiler again. I was waiting, and then at like points I was like, don't do it. And then when they finally did the scene of the glass,
I was like, oh!
I didn't know I could feel that kind of pain through a TV.
I didn't know when we were finally going to get it. I thought, okay, maybe. I was like, are they going to do this at the end? Are they going to do it at 10? Well, he'll be in the hospital, and then finally it'll be revealed in the face.
Nope.
It was so earned, but I think think the other thing, I want to return to Lewis, that character in particular, but in terms of the villain, here's the thing, and we talk about this a lot, and we even talked about this earlier today. We talk about a villain problem in comic book stories.
Yeah.
Now, Netflix clearly
the other side of the villain problem.
It solved it. But particularly here, even when that was happening to him, I managed to feel for him.
Yeah.
Even though I knew this is a terrible guy who's going to make bad choices that will hurt other people forever, I managed to feel for him in that moment. And I wondered every time he made the wrong choice, could he potentially make the right choice here? It's pretty amazing.
Well,
they showed him
you wanted him to. And they used my favorite device on that
Frank.
show. You loved everyone somehow.
No, but he loved Frank.
Remember when he had the kids on the merry-go-round, he said, you tell my friend Frank to save you. He didn't just say you tell.
End.
Yeah, he doesn't say
He's
you
about to
tell
kill
Frank.
him.
He says you tell my
He
friend
lets
Frank.
his friend Frank kill the guy he wants to kill by popping his freaking eyeballs out. Like he
Yeah.
lets. The moment I loved where it was like a crescendo of arcs was when they had a flashback, and it's the moment of Billy the Kid flashback where he's talking about like the famous outlaws
when they're
and
all
Jesse
sitting
James
as the family?
And he's literally, as we're hating him most and loving him most simultaneously, as we're not sure about Frank's not like how he feels, we have a flashback to them being part of the family at the height of this violence, and I was like, oh, heartstrings gone. Like that was everything.
And I think what worked, and the reason this villain worked, besides this is just an excellently written series,
Yes.
it's so well written and so well acted, is that they didn't leave his motivation at just, oh, I was a poor kid and I wanted to be a rich adult. No, they showed you his mother, and he has this line, which in lesser hands could have been a pretty cheesy line, but you know, I would have done anything for you if you had just wanted me. Everything in his life is trying to solve that wound. My mom didn't want me.
My mom didn't want me.
And that's
Ben
much,
Barnes.
right? Isn't
Like-
that a much deeper wound?
And it's a deeper wound on levels that audience members can understand.
Yeah.
Like everyone knows what it feels like to be wanted, or everyone knows what it feels like to not feel like they have enough. You put those two together where you don't feel like you have enough and you just want to be wanted, and then you're like this beautiful man with money just trying to like what an interesting character to empathize with. That's not a character you should be like, poor guy.
But once you
you
realize
do.
he's talking to his mother, you're like, and then he gives her the drugs, and she's like, no, 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 and he's just like, I'll see you next week. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, they went full One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for a scene.
Like he was so hurt. He was so hurt and angry at the same time, but then was like, all right, I'm gonna go back to being this other guy.
And the fact that they call him Pretty Boy, and which they played it a lot. You know,
Oh,
they
yeah.
played into it quite a bit.
Butte.
The Butte,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, which is fine because he's gonna lose
Yeah.
his face.
And he was reading Dorian Gray, and he played Dorian Gray. Did you catch that?
Yeah,
That actually, Ben Barnes played Dorian Gray, and he was reading Dorian. I was like,
nice little.
But do you think, I mean, at the same time as they're playing into the idea of Pretty Boy, they still gut you with it
yeah.
when you realize who else said that to him and the abuse he had suffered and how much he would hate being called a pretty boy.
and how he just needed to identify with wealth because he never had it. Like how
Yeah.
he just wanted these things because he felt like useless. And I loved the villain being that strong. And I love that Netflix didn't do their villain. The only villain problem they have is they do that 1 act, 2 act of their
Yeah.
shows. The first 6-ish episodes having a character and then it bait and switch. Like we didn't like that. This
yeah.
one was like, how about 13 episodes? So you're really invested. You're
Yeah.
really broken. And then by the time we've never even seen Jigsaw. The show's over. We haven't seen Jigsaw.
Nope.
How amazing is that? We have an entire new season of Jigsaw potentially, and we've never seen what he looks like. That's a great opportunity.
Or they could not, and
Or they
that's
could
the
not.
other thing.
You don't
That
have
would
to
be
have him.
fine.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
He's there for you to use later.
And they set up the Nyochi family, so we get Manyochi. We get there's so many opportunities.
Everything
for
they've
villains.
opened up doors for with this. And then, like you said, we're going back to Lewis. You show this whole story about soldiers and how they deal with different things, and Frank dealing with that.
I think that the cool thing about this series, and this is something that a lot of people were talking about leading up to it, in terms of this is a character that is very violent, right? But this series repeatedly did show the consequences of that violence. He kept saying, I damned us all, and he did.
Yeah.
However, you understand the untenable situation that he was in. He's a soldier. He's given orders. Soldiers have to follow
No matter
orders.
what.
But at the same time, you see the cost of war and the cost of violence for every single character in the show. And he is as conflicted about whether he's a hero or not as the audience is, as the show is. And that's exactly how it should be with the Punisher.
And that's what you have with Micro actually trying to help him realize that. Because there was certain points where he was like, I'm just going to kill him. He was like, Frank, you don't have to kill them. We need to do this other thing.
there's options.
There's options. He's like, no, they have to die.
And I really loved how the audience wasn't allowed to shy away from the violence. While they're saying, hey, violence is bad, they show you how bad violence is. There's never a moment where you like kind of skirt the issue. It's like the brutality. You feel every blow. You feel every shot. At no point does it skirt like the long-term effects. Like I didn't expect this show to be John Wick meets This Is Us. I didn't expect it to be like the dichotomy of emotional impact.
The greatest analogy.
The greatest
John Wick
quote
meets This Is Us.
for that
Coy
show.
Jandreau Punisher. It really felt like the impact of violence meets the ramifications of your actions through emotional, like, core of humanity.
Remember, we saw that flashback of war. My apologies.
Yeah,
We saw that flashback of war and saw him how he did it, from the rifle to the shotgun to the handgun to the knife to just bare fists while he was in Kandahar. And you're like, oh, we're going to see the grittiness of this. We're not going to just play it out. We're going to see it through his memories in his eyes.
I think. Oh, no,
I was just going to say, without 13 hours, we wouldn't have had that have as much impact. At any point, without these long moments of feeling for these characters, that Kandahar wouldn't have meant as much. Like,
Nope.
Yeah.
the hallway fight only works if you're invested in Daredevil getting hit. This Kandahar only works if you've had 4 episodes of like, what is this crazy thing that? Oh God.
Yeah, because all of the action is motivated, right? All of it is serving a purpose and telling the story. But the thing is, like, you really can't help when you're watching this to be impressed and taken by these action sequences because they are so well executed and they're really exciting. But what they do, and I think to deal with that, is they give you a character like Lewis, who is he has so much potential to do the right thing and be a good guy. He is so harmed. They talk about how much financially was invested in him, and then he's sort of bereft with nothing. He's lost in the world. He needs something. He's searching. Nothing's fitting. And so he just sort of loses it.
Yeah.
And it's showing you that human consequence in each different character, and definitely with his. This was a standout performance on the show.
Remember, we see with him shooting at his father coming in the door.
He just
and
was
his
so
dad
broken
has
in
to
the
be, and
beginning.
his dad understands. To make that character where it was so realist, his dad is not like, I'm snapping out. What are you doing? He
hugged him. He dove.
His father dove to hug him.
Yeah.
Because he understands everything he's going through.
And how intertwined they made all the characters. The fact that Lewis knew Curtis, that Lewis knew eventually Russo, the fact that like all these characters were in this one mess of horrible ramifications of actions was brilliant writing, because you didn't have to waste time with anyone. Every character made another character's arc better. Like it was the perfect puzzle piece of a show.
Even the dad.
Everyone
got their due. Curtis, I want to talk about Curtis.
Yes.
Here's how you messed with me.
when he took the leg
The
off.
whole time, because he was he was the most morally intact
Yes, he
character, and he was the one that I was wildly in love with for that reason. And not like, you know what I mean. But every second I thought he was going to die.
I know.
Every
You didn't know when it was going to happen?
of the show.
Every time he was with Billy, I was like,
Every time he was Billy, I was like,
Nearly beaten to death, got shot. Like every time he's on screen, I'm like,
Billy
don't kill him,
Bucket,
guys.
I was like, no.
When he was in the room before he got clubbed down with his own leg, then when he like the shootout, and then every time like
Yes.
someone walked into the room in his circle that wasn't Frank, I was
He was like, well,
Yeah.
this is how it goes down.
he was so important to
second,
you.
you think that they're setting you up for that fall. So I have to credit the show, because the twist is that he didn't.
Yeah, right?
Right?
I thought he was dead after he got beat with his own leg
Yeah.
and
Yes.
had the bomb attached to him.
Yeah, dude.
I thought it was going to get to that point where, Lewis tells him to try to cut the white woman.
And that's another integral
I was like,
Lewis
is it going to work?
That white wire moment with Lewis is like, that matters because of how much you care about Curtis, how much you care about Frank, how much you care about Lewis. That moment is 3 character arcs peaking
Also,
again.
it goes back to Frank knowing how to talk to him.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he had to talk to him like a soldier and not as a regular man, if
And
that makes
look at him.
sense.
He had to go to the window.
He had to look
I
at
love
him.
that.
He said, you want to do it? Do it. Do it. And unfortunately, we saw what he ended up doing. But even going back to the bomb scene with Curtis, he was like, you just going to let him kill you? You just going to kill him? You just going to do all this? And he was just berating him in a sense like a soldier is berated by his general, by his commanding officer. And that's what made him just break and say, cut the white one.
And that was another great use of the series versus movie format, is at the end of every episode you had that big moment. Like when he's running away, I was like, cool, they're getting into the runaway. And then when they ended on Frank Castle alive and the whole town, I'm like, whoa. Like every ending was like, okay, I'm not sleeping. Cool, more.
I'm curious what you guys think of. It's also kind of dealing with this idea of family, right? Because, and what they didn't shy away from with Lewis and with Frank was the idea of like, and I think he even says it to Lewis, like, it's all right, you wanted a taste, I did too. So they're not shying away from the fact that these guys in some ways are more bonded with each other
absolutely.
than their own family.
One lost his family, one lost his family by not being in it. Like they're both the same. But
again,
opposite.
him and Billy playing this. They're like brothers. Even again, we got to go back to it. Even throughout it all, at the end on the merry-go-round, call out to my friend Frank. Like you said, right before that's about to happen, we see this big flashback of the whole Castle family with Uncle Billy.
And Billy knowing that he is a lesser to Frank in battle, so he rots his mind by putting him in that position. He's like, I know I can't beat you one-on-one. I'm going to put you in a place where you can't focus.
You can't focus.
And then he takes 2 kidnapped kids. He makes some kids bleeding out in the merry-go-round.
2 more kids are going to die because of you.
Yeah.
But again, that bond, he's like, you were the better man, this, that, and third. That bond, that military bond shows, even again, the bond with Billy and Curtis. I don't want to kill you. He's like, I don't want to kill you. Even Curtis was sitting there, so you're just going to use my own gun on me? All these different bonds we see with the characters, again, that intertwine. The Madani and Frank bond.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about Madani, which is great. I was just gonna say, we haven't even talked about Homeland Security and the CIA and the government plot line.
Yes.
What did you guys think of that? Because this is always a tricky one where I think it's just like,
it's super tricky.
the government can, and any government employee can come across as just rotten and bad. I think where they did very well here is that they dealt with the idea of people making tough and sometimes bad and wrong decisions, even if they're aligned towards the same goal.
I like that they didn't make anyone a black and white bad guy.
Yes.
There's no one in the chain of command that doesn't. Well, no one makes a decision that feels like an.
Rollins is nefarious.
Well, yeah,
he's got one eye. Like, he's a literal mustache twirling
Rollins
dog.
is pretty bad.
He was been like that from the beginning, because remember, he's the one that was setting up the operations in Kandahar. He set up Severus. You know what I'm saying? He's the one that said, look, I point, you shoot.
You're right.
But he thinks he's doing the right thing.
And he thinks he's doing the right thing.
And he thinks he's the classic, like, I'm doing it for the better of the country.
Yeah.
And that's a very traditional trope. But then down the line, when we meet the woman that's responsible for him getting hired, when we meet, like, she feels all the remorse you want her to. She doesn't just go, like, it's not my problem, like you might expect from a show. And then every government employee, like, that works with them, they all make logical decisions and move forward for their betterment and the story's betterment.
Madani is so conflicted throughout it all.
Yeah.
Because she's like, wait, she knows Castle's involved. She's like, he might be alive.
They're stretching our disbelief, like suspension of disbelief, a little bit that she keeps getting to go back to work.
And
also,
you know, Norman,
a little bit.
Like, no one told her, you're off, you're on leave.
Yeah.
You have no choice.
When Micro's wife didn't recognize Frank Castle, like the number one, like
most wanted
he's got a
man.
beard. I'm like,
It's
who's
like,
this guy? And then he shaved. I'm like, that's Frank Castle.
She was like, hey, Pete, you want dinner? Like, wait, that's not Pete. You should know this.
And then
He was
when he gets
all over the
new
news 6 months
identity-
ago.
Yeah, he gets the new identity, and you're like, how's that gonna work?
He still has a
He's
face.
everywhere. Yeah.
My
Pete
only fault
Castiglione has a
Shut
life.
face off.
that Castiglione thing. I was like, Castiglione.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he just like cut to him in a Castiglione.
But you have Madani who goes through all this. She ends up having a love affair with Jigsaw, with Billy Russo, which is one of the common tropes we always see sometimes.
I loved that though.
But the way they did it, you would have never.
The bathtub scene after he kills her.
After he kills her partner.
And then it cuts to an arm reaching across. And I was like, don't you do it.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it. I did the same thing. I was like, nope.
He was washing the blood
Washing the blood.
He made that blood.
Yes.
Every moment at the end of the episode.
But what was so great about that moment, because it was very creepy and it did piss me off, but I also was like, I think there's a part of him that means it.
Yeah.
That wants to comfort her. He's so twisted that he actually does want to.
And at the end, when he's got Frank tied up, when you see him click back and forth between like, this is my friend, this is my enemy, this is my friend. Ben Barnes did an amazing thing with eyeball acting so much that he was always like in between friend and enemy that you didn't know how much you should feel for this man. Like it was so hard to understand what you felt towards the villain.
Till he clipped the cable tie. He was like, he just gave it one little clip, this subtle one, you know.
It was and then that was the whole character, is little things like that.
I think that one of the good things about the government storylines, I liked her character quite a lot because she's also the person trying to, like Curtis, trying to do the right thing. But I think it's very difficult to do the right thing and wield that kind of power.
Of course, you know what you have to do. Like, he has to go down. He's Frank Castle. He's wanted for 37 murders that we know of.
Yeah, we know of.
Yeah.
37 we know of. But she's like, wait, he's the man that can put all this out there. He's the person I need to talk to. But I have to get him to trust me?
Yeah.
And there's so much with her having to deal, like you said, having that power I need to do the right thing, but I have to do what my job says.
But then also, I think that those are the people I think sometimes say, "Oh, I would love to be president." I would never want that because in order to even get there, you have to make so many difficult decisions, so many decisions that have. Sometimes there are decisions that have no good answers. You know?
Yeah.
And I think in a position like that, if you're actually in the CIA or Homeland Security, you would be faced with that every single day of your life.
Right.
And how can you not come out of that damaged?
Well, that's what I was saying with the lack of mustache twirling. Short of the one-eyed villain-looking villain, everyone in government, whether they were against Frank or not, they had a justified reason to do what they did. And Karen Page, every choice she made felt like it came from like the most heart. Like Karen got so much. She was only in a couple episodes, but every time Karen was on screen, you had all of that beautiful backstory from the Daredevil seasons, and then added to that, like her history with Frank. Every time her and Frank were close, you just felt that like emotional will they, won't they.
Are you shipping them? You're shipping
hard. So hard.
You're
I'm
shipping
giving all those hard. Yeah. All the anime on Instagram right now, all about it, you guys. Send me
Even
Instagram.
Madani's boss, real quick. Madani's
that
boss,
scene.
you didn't know where he stood.
Yep.
You fully, not Wolf, the other one that came. Rafi. You didn't know. You were like, wait, is he square, straight and level with this, or is he gonna be on the back end? You're like, you couldn't really tell at points.
That single bullet scene with Wolf, though, the scene in Wolf's house when he the one bullet,
I was like,
Can we give a little shout out to C. Thomas Howell in this? Like, C. Thomas Howell, and he also
Tony Boy killing
he's not right. He's definitely dirty and corrupt.
Yeah.
However, even there's a moment where they say he was a great cop.
Yeah.
For a dirty one, he's still riding that line too.
And the relationship between him and Medina gave us so much perspective on her.
Yeah.
Like with just 2 scenes between them, you like realize what she had to go through to get to that position. Every time he was a disgusting pig, you were like, oh, she's dealt with this forever, and now she's in this position of power because of dealing with that.
Isn't that interesting too? How they didn't shy away from that. He would say some of the most sexist stuff to her, trying to belittle her, and she was like, "I'm here. I know what I'm here for." She stood so strong and stood her ground. She was like, you keep talking.
And the show leaned into those themes, not away from them. There was a scene in the bathroom stall where they thought the 2 guys were having sex, but it was actually him strangling them. They made a gay sex joke that wasn't derogatory. Like you don't
saw
see
people
that.
walk and go,
Yeah,
and
it wasn't making fun of gay people. It was amazing.
Because it's the natural reaction the average person would have.
Micro whips his dick out and they didn't make it weird. That scene where drunk Micro.
Yeah, remember he's like, I'm hung like a moose. Then he told him, I'm hung like a moose.
And they're this close to each other, and it felt like brotherly.
Yes,
they didn't make it weird somehow.
I think because Iman Moss, he was laughing so much when he was doing it.
It was amazing.
He was
I love that you're like,
I'm hung like a moose.
But I also think it was one of those this is why it's so well written, because these are very human moments when he's like, I'm just as surprised as you are. I have a huge.
He was so drunk. He was so drunk with it when he said it.
I loved that character. Everything he did, you're like, I would do the same thing. He just felt so much.
And he needed to earn that, because by the end of it, you needed to believe that Frank would be ready to give it all up for him
and his family. And
you would think the only person he would sacrifice for would be Karen Page, and you find out otherwise.
He's just a good dude. And I want to give credit to the show for taking really inventive camera choices. The scene where they're using the drone and the on-camera and the regular camera. There's 3 different types of filming happening at once, and it never felt shaky cam. It never felt jarring. It felt really well choreographed. And the whole time I was like, this is so inventive that doesn't feel like I'm removed from the story. No. Like I felt like I was in pursuit of Frank Castle, and that's insane.
I think there's probably more things to dig into in terms of the themes. And that's what I'm so surprised about walking away from this, is that this is a series that is The Punisher.
And I'm going to rewatch it.
That I'm going to definitely rewatch it. I think it is top to bottom one of the best series we've seen this year. And I don't mean just comic book series.
Asterisks.
I mean
series.
So we've seen this. Some of the best character development, rich themes. You're talking about big questions that they're tackling, and they dive all the way in, and they don't necessarily give you an answer.
Think about it. If you didn't hear the word Marvels in front of The Punisher, and you didn't know what it was, and
if
you
didn't
just
call him The Punisher,
and you just watched it, it was
Frank Castle.
It's still
if they
Frank
called
Castle.
it Frank Castle, I'd be like, what a great program.
What a great series.
Yeah.
And we don't say this just as comic book fans. This is a great, like you just said, it's a great series. You could take away the Punisher. You could take away Marvels. You could take away, oh, well, he was featured in Daredevil. Take all that backstory away and just give you this.
And they did the Easter eggs really tastefully. There was only a few, and it never felt like I wasn't waiting for Stan Lee, for example. Like at no point was I like,
where's the Stan Lee?
But I also had
that would
a
have
moment.
been so weird because
if
he
they had, like,
probably would have just gotten shot.
Yeah, that would have
been the
very
weirdest.
awkward.
But at the
We do
same
not
time,
want
when
that.
he slid across the desk and they showed the news, the bottom left panel, the news station was the Ant-Man news station.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. Like that was a great Easter egg that was world building.
Name those Easter eggs. What are those Easter eggs?
WHIH.
WHIH is always,
Yeah.
the world news is always
That's the Marvel's thing.
What were the other Easter eggs?
Black Widow video cassette on
yeah.
O'Connor's
Okay.
TV.
The Dorian Gray, that was brilliant with
The
Ben
Dorian Gray.
Barnes. What else was there? There was a Welcome Back, Frank. When Micro literally said Welcome Back, Frank, one of the best runs in Punisher history. And literally the end of the episode, he looks at a TV and he goes, Welcome Back, Frank, which is an Ennis run that is beautiful. There was a lot of the style of violence. A couple of the kills were straight from Warzone and Punisher War Journal. The beard stuff, him being construction workers from the comics. Do you know any more? There was a bunch, but they were all story based and plot based. They weren't like wacky hijinks.
They weren't,
like,
and I saw a couple of reviews that people were actually upset that there wasn't more connectivity to the MCU and whatnot. I'm fine with that. We need a series or a film that doesn't connect to all the madness that's going on. I'm glad we didn't hear anything about any of the other superpowers. We did. Finally, we're in New York and did not hear the incident once.
yes, and Daredevil didn't swing by. I was so afraid.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
Like the idea of like, because you did swing by and I was just picturing Spider-Man like,
Like Frank walks by to the background, you just see like, and then they don't mention it.
Oh,
No,
no,
it's-
hat
what's
off.
going on, Red?
yeah, I'm so. I got to give credit to the show for not feeling like it needed to.
It didn't have to.
It didn't. It knew it was so good.
Final question is, we started talking about this and I feel like we've probably addressed it, but one of the big things that people talked about was that there has been so much violence in the United States in particular, with gun violence. Did you feel that the show addressed that well, or did it not need to?
I feel like this was the best program to handle the subject of PTSD, violence with the military, violence with guns and bombs, everything else, of any I've seen. And a lot of things are trying to breach that. And it didn't feel biased. It felt real. It felt grounded because it didn't avoid the pain. Every one of these things has ramifications. Every single choice anyone makes involving violence affects both sides. And this show, even the good guy did horrible things and he felt the pain of it. That was a broken, bleak, torn man, and everyone suffered for it. Like you said, when he said, I've ruined everything, that was the show. So I think it dove into it personally.
I think it handled it well. I understand that we are in this day and age where, for lack of better words, mass shootings have become common.
Yeah.
They become commonplace. And people are saying, well, I don't want this in my comic books. Well, unfortunately, this comic book character was established well before these have become commonplace.
Yeah.
And this show knows we've been going through it, and they say, listen, we need to have this. We can't shy away from it, but we can't overdo it. We can't pull back, and we can't make fun of it. It handles it perfectly. This character takes a lot of guns, and there's a lot of times he doesn't even have to use guns. He uses his bare hands, he uses he uses knives, he uses different things.
And he shows remorse when he had to go to
Every
the
time
base.
he does it, he uses remorse.
When he went to the base and he's like, I might have to hurt a soldier.
Yeah.
When the Punisher goes, I'm sorry for using guns.
The kid?
They're doing something right.
With the kid, the younger soldier,
the
he's
tunnel?
like, in the tunnel, he's like, yeah, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't. And then after he gets in the van, he said, I had to hurt a kid. I didn't kill him, just had to hurt him. They knew how to handle this in just the way, because we had that mass shooting on a military base. They knew how to handle this where it did not disrespect anyone who had lost their life to it. It didn't disrespect the subject matter of it. It didn't put that pressure of like, oh, people are just going to make fun of it now when we're dealing with this. It didn't do that.
There's excitingly a lot to unpack with the series.
Absolutely.
It's so well done, but I think full stop, it's just really well written, well produced, well acted, well directed. It's
Very
just
much.
a good television show. And what delights me is to see Marvel experts like yourselves stamp of approval,
A
full stamp of
Full
approval
of
from
it.
a full Marvel expert. And I think it also works for people that are not as familiar with those characters. They can get familiar with them in a great show, and then go back and read some of the
Go back
comics.
and
Yeah,
Good
everyone watch John Wick
for
meets This
you.
Is Us.
John Wick meets This Is Us. It's That is the pull quote. There will be.
If there is not that little bar that says it's John Wick meets Jesus.
That's the one.
Coy James.
Thank you guys so much for talking Punisher with me today. Where can the people find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Mr. J Washington. It's right down there. Thank you, JTE. MRJAYWSHINGTON and the Trusty Sidekick Podcast. So.
You can find me at CoyJandreau on Instagram, on Twitter, and I love talking about this stuff, so please find me in those places. I do Insta reviews on Instagram, and I also do Marvel movie news every Tuesday for all of this glory.
Yeah, check out their work. Thank you. It's been my honor to talk with you guys about this today.
You.
I'm so excited to be able to finally really talk about this series. I hope that you guys watch it. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you not? What did you love? Who was your favorite character? Were you as worried about Curtis
as we were?
Curtis, no!
Let us know, and we will see you next time on Screen Junkies News. Click here for more awesome Screen Junkies news and click the logo to subscribe.